Hey everybody, Frucci Clan here, Clever Geocache Hides. I wanted to make this video for all you new cachers out there hiding your first geocache. There's lots of things that I learned as a new geocacher. I've hidden over 300 caches over 16 years, and man, did I mess up a lot and did I put a lot of bad caches out there. I'm making this video just to hopefully give you some tips and tricks so that doesn't happen with your caches, and so you can get some real creative and clever geocache hides out there for others to enjoy. If you haven't seen my intro to geocaching video, I'm going to go ahead and leave a link to that in my description. It's a great video to just kind of give you an overview of what the sport's about and what you're looking for, how to log a cache, all of those wonderful things. So check that out in the description and at the end of the video. All right, how to create geocache hides that get favorited. So what does getting favorited even mean? Well, geocaching has this really cool feature, if you're a premium member, that you get to put a little favorite heart on any geocache you think was especially awesome for any reason. You get one favorite point for every 10 geocaches you find, and a lot of hiders out there, people that put out creative and clever hides, really love to collect these favorite points. It means they're doing a good job and all their hard work was really appreciated.
Gimme, I need, gimme,
Okay, all right.
So there's 5 main categories that I narrowed it down to. Those categories are the container that you use, the location that you choose, the overall experience of finding the geocache, and the fourth is the listing itself. And finally, number 5, I am just calling nostalgia. The container will probably get wet. You need to make sure first and foremost that the container is waterproof. So here's an example of a waterproof container. It has clips on it that hold it down. It's got a rubber seal that will prevent water from getting inside of it. You're going to have your logbook, which is any paper. A lot of times I use waterproof paper. You can find those at like REI or any hiking store or outdoor store. They have special paper that's resistant to water. And then also you can get these little craft baggies. You want to put it inside of a Ziploc bag whenever possible. So you've got the waterproof paper, you got the Ziploc bag, and you've got an outer waterproof container. This is a great container that I use a lot, especially involving water. This is one of the matchstick containers that are meant to be waterproof. And you can see it's got the little plastic ring around it, the O-ring, in order to prevent the water from getting in. So these ones are especially good. So funny story about containers.
Can we start the story now?
When I first started geocaching, I found maybe 10 geocaches. And all the geocaches that I found were either lamppost hides, which is the little skirt on the bottom of a lamppost in a parking lot, or they were just a simple container in the bushes, something like that. So I didn't have much reference for what a geocache container could and should be. So I had it in my head, man, this sport that I found is really fun to do. I really like finding geocaches. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to hide as many geocaches as I can, as fast as I can.
That is an excellent goal.
Well, I was at a church rummage sale, and guess what I found? The sale of the century. They had boxes of old cookie tins. They were only like a nickel a piece. So I bought boxes and boxes and boxes of these cookie tins. What I ended up doing is I hid all those cookie tins. I put my log inside of a baggie and I put the cookie tin out in the woods. Well, that worked for about 3 months because winter came and the rains came. Suddenly I had 40 to 50 containers that people could not open because they were all rusted shut. Although my intentions were good to hide lots of geocaches out there for people to find, I didn't yet know the importance of waterproofing your cache container.
It works! It works! It's waterproof!
So I had to go and either archive those caches or I had to swap them out for other waterproof containers, and that was a hard lesson to learn. I've heard that people think that new cachers shouldn't be hiding caches until they've found 100 caches. I don't necessarily believe that. Just know that we tend to hide geocaches that we have experienced, right? So if you only have found 2 or 3 different types of caches, those are the ones you're probably going to hide. I think it's important to keep finding caches as you're hiding caches, because the more caches that you find, the more experiences you'll have and the more ideas you'll come up with. Another thing that's really important with a cache container is using camouflage of some kind.
Totally ridiculous. Like, why do I have to be in camouflage?
If you just hang a container in the middle of a tree that looks like a big tree in the springtime, in the wintertime, the tree is going to thin out, and guess what's going to be left? Your big, bright, hanging geocache, right for the world to see, right? So that's just calling out for someone to come and take it, some kid to grab it. Camouflage is really important. There's lots of different ways you can camouflage a geocache. You can use camouflage duct tape if it's in a wooded environment. What I like to do is hide a geocache in plain sight. And what that means is find an object that is in a certain area and try to mimic that object or match the color of that object. For instance, a fake bolt cache that has other bolts around it. I have another cache, it's on a trail, and there's not a lot of places to hide things. So what I actually did was I made my own concrete cinder block that matched the other cinder blocks around it, and I hid my geocache inside of it, flipped the cinder block over, and it matched its surroundings. So it was hiding in plain sight, and unless you're a geocacher, odds are you were not gonna know that it was there. It just drastically lowers the likelihood that somebody will mess with it and break it or take it. Another important thing when you're choosing a container is pick a container that fits the space that you want to put it in. If the hole in the tree is this big, should you put a geocache inside of it that's this big? You would if you wanted to be evil about it and have people have a really hard time of finding it.
Well, I don't really know you, but you don't look evil.
But most of the time you would want to pick a container that matches the space for which you're putting the cache container in. So that makes it easier to find, a little bit more secure, easier to keep it in the space where you intended it to be so that it's not rolling around. So that's another thing to think about. When you're making a geocache, especially if it's a creative one that's taking some time to build, just make 2, if not 3, right out of the gate if it's something you really like and you think it's going to be popular. That way you have them ready to go. If that cache container goes missing, you can put the other one in play right away, and people don't have to wait very long for that to happen. Don't put food in a geocache. As tempting as it may be, all that's going to do is attract animals and ants, and they're going to ransack the geocache. They're probably going to carry it off, chew it up. Make sure that your geocache container doesn't look like something else that could be dangerous. If you decided to make a geocache out of a piece of PVC pipe with caps on either end, that could be thought to be a pipe bomb. So think about that when you're choosing your container, when you're choosing how you're going to paint your container. Is it going to make your cache look like something that should not be there? We talked about putting swag in the container, which is like toys and trinkets and that sort of thing. As the geocache owner, you are actually responsible to make sure that if you have a larger container, that there is cool things for people to have in there. So if you happen to be in the area and you check on your container to make sure that it's there, make sure there's some cool little toys and things in there, because not everybody follows the rule of, if you want something out of a geocache in terms of swag, you need to put something of equal or greater value in its place if you take something. Not everybody adheres to that, so you might end up with a couple of rocks and a couple of pennies where you used to have a bunch of cool toys in there. All right, category 2, location, location, location. This is a big one. Number 1, is the location safe? Now, can we ever know if any location is completely safe? No. But we can use common sense, right? So should we put a geocache right in the middle of a busy intersection, or just on the sidewalk where there's a lot of fast-moving traffic, or on a guardrail right where there's 40-mile-an-hour traffic zooming by?
That don't make no sense.
Probably not. What if somebody goes there with their children? That's not a very safe place for them to be. Another thing to think about is there parking close by to where you're placing your geocache? If you're on a fast-moving road, is there enough shoulder for the geocachers to pull off on where they feel safe enough to search for the geocache without being too close to traffic? There are a few occasions where some people like to hide evil geocaches, which are caches that are meant to be very well camouflaged, hard to find, and maybe in an area that might be unsafe if you don't make the right choices as far as how to pursue the geocache. I have an example of one geocache that I hid with a friend. He encouraged me to do this.
It wasn't my idea. I was basically dragged to it.
In the redwoods of Santa Cruz, there was a large stump overhanging a cliff. It was reachable by foot. You could walk out onto the stump, and we actually hid the geocache on a wire leash that hung over the edge of the stump. The way that you had to retrieve it was you had to walk onto the stump, which was just a little hairy of a walk, onto the stump, lay on your belly, reach over the front, and pull up the leash that had the geocache on it.
It's not your style.
I've done some dangerous stuff, and it's memorable, but
Come and take a look.
you will see it.
Yeah, so that's like a 20-foot drop straight to the bottom, and then it slopes off probably another 40 to 60, probably keeps going way down there.
Now, this is potentially a dangerous thing to do. We made sure that we had a cache title that caught people's attention and let them know that this was potentially dangerous to find. In the cache description, we were very clear as far as the potential dangers, and in the difficulty, and in the terrain rating, so that they knew what they were getting into. I don't like to hide too many caches like that, but when I do, I'm very clear about what's expected of the person in order to retrieve that cache. So another unique thing you can do is you can name the geocache based on the location. I have one cache that's actually on the corner of two streets. One street is Jefferson, and the other street is Davis Street. Jefferson Davis was a famous person, so I made the geocache about the history of Jefferson Davis at that location. That's another thing that you can do, is you can look at a street sign or a road or whatever, and you can use that as part of the experience. Really think about your location that you're bringing somebody to. What is special about that location? What is unique about it? Is there something about it that they're going to remember forever? Does it have a beautiful view? Does it have amazing wildlife? Does it have a scenic hike that brings you up to a hilltop where the geocache is with a big oak tree? Is there some kind of unique structure there? An old building, an old tower, or something like that? Cool spot. Oh gosh, look at this though. Okay, so there's a cavern over here. I don't know how you would get this.
Oh my gosh, you're brave right now.
That's crazy, dude. Oh my God. No, it's not.
Is it even the tunnel?
Is it significant in some way? Are you bringing somebody to the back of a parking lot next to a dumpster that stinks? Odds are, if it's not a place you would like to go, it's not a place somebody else would like to go. So as far as location goes, we hide a lot of geocaches in parks, okay? Because they're public spaces. Probably the best place to hide a geocache. One thing you want to be aware of is if you're hiding a geocache on the outer edge of a park, you might be very close to somebody's private property. So if a geocacher is hunting for a geocache on the edge, they may be able to be seen by a homeowner just on the other side of the fence. So keep that in mind. That is potentially a location that can make a geocacher feel uncomfortable or make that homeowner feel uncomfortable because somebody is rooting around in the bushes on the other side of the fence, or they're lurking in a weird manner that they just don't understand. So even though you are in a public space, you need to look at the big picture and look outside of where you are, not just in your immediate space. It's also vital that you take accurate geocaching coordinates, whether you're using a GPS handheld or a phone.
Let's go find out where we're supposed to be.
What you want to do is you want to approach and wait for 1 minute at the geocache location and take your coordinates. Then leave the spot, come back from another direction a second time, and do the same thing a third time, waiting an entire minute at the geocache location each time. Then you could take those three numbers and average them together to get the best coordinate. All right, number 3, the overall experience of your geocache. Did you give somebody something to do? Okay. What I have found is that most geocachers are okay with using a little bit of their brain to find a geocache.
I love this. So they'll have to stand here and find the combo to this one.
Right.
Get the puzzle out, then they can go sit down.
Right. There's so many geocaches out there that are just easy to find, right? You walk up, it's clearly right there. You open the container, you sign it, you move on with your day. Right when I started geocaching, I knew right away, after finding enough of those ho-hum geocaches, that I didn't want the ones that I hid to be like that. It took me a couple years of hiding those cookie tins to realize that people didn't think they were all that great. I like to give people something to do that is not terribly hard to do, but it requires some thought, some kind of activity in order to find the geocache. I have a series of geocaches that I've done called Just a Tool, okay? Is I have a container that's easy to find, just like one of those ho-hum geocaches. The cacher walks up, grabs the container. They think that's the end of the journey. They open it up, and inside the container is a tool of some kind, okay? Whether that's a stick with a magnet on it, whether it is a piece of yarn with a hook on it, whether it's a screwdriver, something. Now is when they have to think, okay? They look at this tool and they go, okay, the cache is called Just a Tool. I have to figure out how to use this tool to find the geocache. So then they have to work at 20 feet or so around in a circle until they can figure out how to use that tool. And I've had a huge response from people as far as how much fun that was. It made them think. Thanks for making me use my brain. Thanks. That was really a fun experience. So I'm going to continue doing geocaches like that. But then you also have another stage you need to take care of, right? So sometimes the geocache can go missing and you have to maintain that and fix it. Sometimes the tool can go missing. I have another geocache in this park, actually, just right over that way, called Cache a Whopper. For this geocache, I could have just hung something in a tree and the geocacher would bring their own tool of the trade, something like this, like a reachy pole that extends, right? Well, instead of doing that, I made an elaborate geocache that's a giant fish that's a certain weight. Then I actually provided the fishing pole required to retrieve that fish. I made sure the fishing pole was just strong enough and long enough to retrieve the fish, but making it somewhat difficult to do. So they have to assemble the pole themselves, they have to retrieve the fish, they have to put the pole back together, and then they have to put the tool back as well. So that is probably my second or third most favorited cache because it gave something for people to do. They had to find the tool, they had to assemble the tool, and in the cache description I'm very clear, don't use any tools that you brought with you. Use the tool that I've provided and it will give you the best experience for the geocache. Another thing you could do is maybe you present a physical challenge for somebody. Maybe they have to climb a tree. Maybe they have to go on a long hike. I have one geocache here in my town that's in a dog park and they have a 75-foot long dog tunnel. I hid the geocache in the middle of the dog tunnel. So in order to get the geocache, you either need to have a small child with you, a small geocacher, or you have to do a squatty walk. So a significant physical challenge. But I'm very clear as far as what you need to do in the description. I have another one that requires a mental challenge. This geocache in my town, there's a big sign on the side of a building. It's called Where's Old Town Elk Grove, as in Where's Waldo. Where's Waldo, as you know, is the little man that's hiding in the picture and you gotta find him. Well, in my geocache, what I did was I took that picture and I brought it into Photoshop and I erased items from the picture, and the geocacher has to find which items have been erased in the photo. Those items correspond with numbers which tell them where the final stage of the geocache is. A significant mental challenge for them to do, and I've gotten great responses on that one. The bottom line is make it fun, make it unique, make it something that you would like to find. Make the geocache you wish you could find, not just the geocache that you've seen done previously.
Everybody start thinking outside the box.
And raise the geocaching bar for everybody else, because odds are if you put that extra time and effort and somebody has a great experience, odds are somebody's gonna use part of your design or take inspiration from your geocache for one that they're gonna hide in the future, which means it benefits more and more and more geocachers along the way. Also, create geocaches that inspire people to work together as a team. Maybe a mechanism of some kind that requires more than two hands. Something like that that really gets people working together, really enhances the experience for sure.
Then you will have 4 seconds to unlock the ship safe. Good luck.
Oh, you only have 4 seconds to do it.
4 seconds from when?
From when you put it in.
Okay.
Okay, so I'll dial it and you do it.
Okay.
Okay, hold on. Do I have to keep it?
I don't know if you have
Hold
to
on.
hang up.
I already got that
I
one.
feel like this is a bad.
Okay, ready? What is it?
Trigger.
Turn it. You could also use teamwork in creating a cache. Collaborate with other geocaching friends of yours that have special skills that they can all contribute to a single geocache.
I was gonna say, how do you do that?
I printed these on my 3D printer and they hooked them all together to make it.
You guys are so geeky.
I know.
Super geeky.
This is what happens when geeks go outdoors. Number 4 is the listing itself. Another thing that you can do is in the listing you can do a history lesson. I know some geocachers that write some amazing descriptions in their cache because the location that they chose has significance and they want to give a history lesson about it.
Got this whole thing up to teach us a lesson. What?
For instance, in a cemetery, if you bring someone to a certain headstone in a cemetery, you can talk about the life of that person. So there's lots of opportunities to give information about a location that somebody might otherwise have never learned before. You also have an image gallery on your cache listing, which is where people will drop photos of themselves at your cache. But you can also use that as a place to drop a hint as well. For instance, on my Where's Old Town Elk Grove listing, I actually put a picture of Where's Waldo in my image gallery. So if anybody was looking for an extra hint, that might help them along. The hint itself, make sure that's creative and is actually helpful. You want that hint to help the geocacher one step further so that they don't end up giving up and walking away. You can also make the cache title name significant in some way to the location of the cache. So be creative with that as well. It's also really important that you rate your cache difficulty and terrain correctly. This is a guide that I used to use when I first got started. Feel free to screenshot this. And it just gives you some scenarios and things to look for when you are trying to make sure you rate your cache appropriately so people know what they're getting into and what they can expect. And finally, number 5, nostalgia. Find something that you love in your life, whether it is music, a movie, a person.
You'll think of something. You're good at that.
You can make a geocache to honor that. Make your listing title, your description, or your history, or whatever you're going to write about in your geocache. So the title, the description, and the container should all follow a similar theme. A lot of my friends who are geocachers, we have hidden geocaches in honor of each other.
Oh, that is so sweet.
Just as a little thank you for being my friend and being in geocaching with me. I have a cache here locally for my buddy CJ Fish Music is his name, that is called Somewhere Over the Rainbow, which is musical, and the cache container is a wooden rainbow trout. So you've got CJ Fish Music. I have another one, my buddy Sparky916. He got his name from Clark W. Griswold from the National Lampoon's movies. So Sparky is his name. He's known in Christmas Vacation for lighting up the Christmas tree, right? Putting the plugs together for Christmas. And so I found a tree on my hikes that had an actual electrical cord growing out of it with a plug on the end of it. How perfect, right? I put a little nano container inside the plug, and I made that geocache in honor of him. You can also take like a board game that you loved as a kid and turn that into a geocache. My buddy made a battleship related puzzle for people to solve, and the final container that you found was a 3D printed battleship. It matched the theme from the title, the description, the puzzle, and the container. I made this cache called Save the Clock Tower, all about one of my favorite movies, Back to the Future. The coordinates for this one lead people to the clock tower in my town at the local library that looks just like it from the movie. And I finished it off on the same theme with a little DeLorean final container.
This is truly amazing.
And of course, you can also make a geocache in memory of somebody who's passed away. I have a geocache in honor of my father, actually at the cemetery where he was laid to rest. And I took that opportunity to write a description about him, the man that he was, who I'm going to remember, and I've gotten a lot of good responses from that. So you could always use a geocache to honor somebody in that way. So in order to hide a geocache, there are very specific guidelines that geocaching puts in place so that somebody's not using a geocache for commercial reasons, in order to promote some other product or business. But mainly, guidelines have to do with safety and having permission where you are placing that geocache. I'm not going to go over all the guidelines today. I'm just going to kind of give a rough overview of some of the key, most important points. If you'd like to read the entire guidelines, I recommend that you do that before you start hiding geocaches, just so you know exactly what is allowed and what isn't. So when it comes to reviewers, in my early days, there was a lot I didn't know about hiding a geocache. I would put a cache in a place and a reviewer would look it over and they would come back and they would block my listing and say that I needed to change something. And at first I kind of took that personally, kind of got my feelings hurt about it, thinking that the reviewer was just out to frustrate me or just be a pain in the butt. But truthfully, reviewers are volunteers. They're geocachers just like us, and they are doing that service just because they're willing to do it, not because they get paid. And my advice to you is, if you get a reviewer that doesn't publish your cache right away, listen to what they're saying, do what they tell you to do as far as correcting that cache, editing it in some way, and then learn from that for the next time. And the more and more times you're able to talk to reviewers and ask their opinion about things, and the better and better your cache hides are going to be for next time. So remember, when a reviewer tells you to fix something, just fix it. Don't take it personally. So I hope all of these tips have been helpful in some way. I'm sure I've forgotten lots of tips along the way. I've been hiding geocaches for 16 years. I've got a lot more to learn, but I just wanted to give you a little bit of a head start, some key points of things to think about before you started throwing your cookie cans out there in the woods like I did. So subscribe and like, tell a friend about the channel. Until next time, I'm Frucci Clan, Clever Geocache Hides, and we will see you on the flip side.